Hello, guys, and welcome back to another installment of Galley Stories, Stories to Bering Sea and Beyond. I'm your host, Mark Kaler. And once again, before we get started, just another announcement about our ALS fundraiser in Pat Dwyer's name, coming up on May 15th at Bad Jimmy's Brewing Company. They're on Leary Way in Ballard. Trident Seafoods is graciously going to send out their fork and fin food truck with 100% of all sales off that truck going to directly benefit the Pat Dwyer ALS Fund. So I encourage you guys to come out to that event, share it among your Facebook, etc. And follow us on Galley Stories on Facebook to be a part of our live podcast for that day. And today with me, I've got a kind of a unique catch. I've got Howard Malcolm. He's the captain of the FV Northern Patriot that does fish for Trident. How are you doing today, Howard?
I'm doing well. Doing
Good.
well.
Well, you've heard all of these podcasts at this point.
I have, yep.
So take it away.
So I was born in Minnesota. Okay, my dad was in the Air Force. He'd just gotten out of the Air Force, and we were just kind of moving around, And so I actually only lived in Minnesota for 9 months, and then we moved to Sacramento, I think. I was too young to remember all this, and ended up in Federal Way, just south of Seattle here, until through the most of the fourth grade. Spent a year in Phoenix of my 5th grade, and then 6th, 7th, and 8th grade I lived in Hawaii. Company shipped my dad over there, and we did that, and then moved back to mainland and settled in Oregon, in a little town called Philomath, Oregon, there, and went to high school, and that's where I graduated from. So we can take off from there.
Take off from there. Something brought you to the water.
Well, it did. So I was getting ready in my senior year, high school. Didn't know exactly what direction I was going to do. Me and my buddy were talking about joining the Navy, and Mom wanted me to go to college. It wasn't going to be my thing. And a couple brothers, 3 brothers that were up in Dutch Harbor at the time, and one of them had been actually fishing at the time, came down, and he was come down with some pockets full of money, going, oh wow, look at this, and he had, it was wads, right? And I thought, shit, maybe I should do that. So I checked into it, and but everyone they all told me, don't come up to Dutch Harbor without a job. If you come up, try and find a fishing job, you're going to starve to death before you find one. This is 1979. And so...
And you were 19?
I was 17.
17.
I was 17. So I went to... I got a job with Pacific Pearl Seafoods to work in their crab processing plant in Dutch Harbor. Had to forge my birth certificate, because you can't work in a cannery by state law in Alaska unless you're 18. I was still 17. So, did the whole, photocopy of a photocopy and white out and type in change the year, and then take a photocopy of that and a photocopy of the photocopy, and 10 photocopies later, hey, it looked legit, right? Sent it on in, and I was hired, sent on up there. I got up there August of 79. Immediately tried to get in the good graces of the supervisors, and the foremen, and want to get out on the dock, be a offloader, make my presence known to the fleet, and actually just kind of get my bearings on a boat, Geez, and so I did. After about a week of processing, they moved me on the dock. I became a processor, and that first trip down that ladder, 20 feet down. It was a high dock. It was about 20 feet down, and then stepping across 3 feet onto a slippery rail of a boat, and then jumping on. I was scared shitless. I won't lie, but I did it, and I got used to it, and then after that, I started, every day I get off work, and I just start walking the docks and asking for jobs, and it took me 3.5 months before I was picked up on a boat. And
this is in Dutch?
It is in Dutch, yeah.
What were they processing?
So, king crab. Okay. It was during king crab season.
So you were going down and pitching?
Yeah, I was going down and pitching. Yep, I was a crab
So
pitcher.
boat comes up. Explain that a little bit for us.
Okay, so the boat comes in with a catch of king crab. Okay, and it's their turn to offload. They pull up. You go down there. You pop the hatches. The boat crew empties the water out of the tank, and you get down there. You have these brailer bags that with just a web. They have a steel hoop, top and bottom, and then web in between. And they lower it down in there, and you jump down right on top of the crab, and you pick them up, and you start throw them in the brailer bag, and you got a crane operator up above that's lifting them up ever so slightly to keep them so they don't spill out, and until it gets full, and then they're swung off and they're weighed and they're put on the dock, and they're taken to the processing plant, which some of them, the processing plant's just right there. They like an Akaten, they just swing them right there. On this dock, they had to forklift them in, and they put them.
These
in.
are all live crab, though.
All live crab. Oh yeah, and there would be some boats that would have dead crab. There was one boat called the Wickman Command. It's no longer in the fleet, but we used to call it the Dead Command because it was a big boat. It was like the Northern Patriot, that size, and about 160 foot, 170 foot, and they would come in, 4 tanks full, maybe 400,000 pounds of crab on board, and they would always be lucky to have 100,000 pounds of live crab.
Really?
It was the biggest waste of resource. It was horrible. But we'd have to wade through all this dead crab, and they'd have mounds of dead crab on their back deck.
Was it the refrigeration?
So you don't refrigerate crab. It's just you have water, and you're always pumping water into it. So I think it's a combination. They didn't have good circulation. It was also a combination of somehow, I think because of the proximity for the crab tanks to the engine room, the water was getting hot. And because there was actually evidence of kind of somewhat cooking down there. Huh. I think the crab was getting...
Did they have the breakers in to keep them kind of separated?
Yeah, they had those. Yeah, the bin boards.
Yep.
The bin boards, yeah. So they got those. Yeah, so anyway, so you offload the crab, and that's it. And 3.5 months of that. And actually, at the very end, I got raised up to being a forklift driver.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man, I tell you, that's... You're a step above.
Oh, yeah.
Well, first of all, if you're an offloader, you're a step above the rest of the people in the cannery anyway. So, in our minds.
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, so I got hired on a boat called the Golden Cloud. Later on became the Newitna, and it since has sunk. But at that point, it was the Golden Cloud. And so 135-foot schooner rig, so house aft. So we went out, and it was for Pribilof blue crab, king crab season. They don't even have that anymore, but that's what it was, and it was a 7-inch minimum. Bristol Bay red king crab is 6.5 inches across the back. At that time, Pribilof's was 7-inch across the back. Big crab, not a lot of them. It's typically
15 a pot, 20 a pot.
Well, yeah, but so a day into the trip, we started jogging due to weather. At the time, I don't know if it's been surpassed, but at the time, it was the lowest millibar low that ever entered into the Bering Sea. And all the boats, apparently, I'm green as shit, right? I didn't know what the hell was going on, but apparently
you just got off the forklift.
I just got off the forklift, yeah. And so all the boats went into the islands, the Pribilof Islands, to anchor up, except for this boat and then the Flying Cloud, which is now the Gladiator. Okay, and we're the only 2 boats out there. Well, we're jogging, and I'm sick. I'm seasick, and it's rough. We had a deck load of gear on board, so it's only the level you go upright on, not flat. And it was on board, and we're just jogging, and the skipper came down and woke us all up, says we got to go out on deck. The other person sharing the stateroom was the chief engineer, and he says, we're not going anywhere. Too rough to fish. I don't know what he's thinking. We're not going to go out there. I don't know what he's thinking about going out on deck. He's laying in his bunk, so I thought, well, I'm going to lay in my bunk till he gets out, And all of a sudden, the boat just leans all the way over, and it went 90 degrees. and it was on its side.
So you're laying on the side of the wall.
Yeah, well, so his boat was kind of side to side, and my boat was
Bunk?
Bunk. Yeah, my bunk was fore and aft. His bunk was side to side. So when it went up on a side, it went starboard windows in the water. He fell from his bunk into my bunk, and he's on top of me, and he's yelling, "Get to the wheelhouse! Get your survival suit on! Get to the wheelhouse! Get your survival suit on!" There was no safety in those days, no safety training, no safety orientation, none of that. I did not know what a survival suit was. I did not know what was happening. I thought we were going to go out and fish. So I'm grabbing my socks, I'm grabbing my boots, I'm trying to grab my rain gear, I'm grabbing my gloves.
But the boat's sideways.
And the boat's on its side. Okay, so then I finally get to the wheelhouse. By the time I get to the wheelhouse, it actually righted itself. And it came back, and the radios are blaring, and there was talking, and there was stuff, and the guys go, "Well, what took you so long?" And I go, "Well, I had to get all my stuff, to go out there. I think I ended up with one boot and maybe one glove, things are because I'm getting tossed around, and so." He had actually, turns out he had woken us up because the load was shifting a little bit. Well, when we rolled over on our side, actually all the pot ties on that port rail had busted, and the load had shifted, and it all went over onto the starboard rail. It didn't fall off, but it shifted on over. And so, because with the house aft boat like that, you kind of leave an alleyway so you could walk forward. So it wiped out the king coiler. It wiped out I don't even think we had a coiler at the time, but it wiped out the controls to the block. It wiped everything out. But also, it was a twin screw boat, and it busted both rudders off. Snapped them off.
No, you can't.
And so he, and the captain's name is Harold Story, Norwegian guy. Very knowledgeable, and he just, by twin screwing it, he kept us into the seas until the storm subsided enough that he could lay a course to Dutch Harbor. And he twins between him and his brother. I forget his brother's name. He had a brother on there. Between the two of them, they twin screwed that boat all the way to Dutch Harbor
with no rudders.
With no rudders on board. So. And then we got in, they just tied it up, and they said, "Well, we're flying out, it needs some work." Oh, okay.
So
but about a half an hour, I asked him later on, how big was that wave? And he goes, "Well, I don't know." But he claimed that it came over the bow and it completely swallowed up the whole boat, rolled back, swallowed up the deck as it came and hit the wheelhouse, swallowed up the whole wheelhouse and pushed us on the side. And he figures that was probably an 80-footer. That's what he figured. It's probably about an 80-footer. I have no way to, I can't just. Yeah, I don't know. Besides being green, but then about a half an hour after that happened to us, a wave hit the Flying Cloud, and it actually busted the wheelhouse loose on the Flying Cloud. And
took it right off?
Yeah, well, busted it loose, so it was shifting around. So then it opened up about a 4-inch crack between the house and the deck, and then apparently they were taking chain and chain binders and chain binding it down,
strapping the house down.
Exactly, and taking mattresses and shoving it up in the crack and stuff, and that's all word of mouth. This is what I was just told, but that's So the only two boats out there.
So you were 17, and
I had turned 18 by this point. I turned 18.
So now we're legal.
Yeah, I'm legal, and so. So I went from that boat. Surprised I kept fishing after that. Went to that boat to a boat we were fishing.
Did you even get paid? I mean, you didn't catch any fish, right?
No, we didn't get paid. There was nothing.
Yeah.
We only fished for 20 hours before we only hauled gear for 20 hours. I can't even remember offloading. I don't know.
Well, no, we probably dumped it off in the water.
No, we must have offloaded. I don't know. Anyway, so then I got off, and so when I was let me backtrack a little bit. So when I'm working in the processing plant, the cannery, but it's not really a cannery. I mean, really only canneries can stuff. Nothing was canned there, but everyone called it a cannery, right? And I was working at the cannery, and so you always have an influx of new people coming in to work. And at that point, it was mainly they would hit up around colleges, and all, try and get these things. And it kind of became a joke, that we figured you'd see it at the back of books of matches, Alaska jobs, right? But so they had done a hiring gamut in Spokane, and one of the persons that got hired was this beautiful, tall, blonde lady, a couple of years older than me, and she showed up and was like a goddess.
Look out!
Right, look out! Well,
in the plant.
Yeah, in the plant. Yeah. Well, she became that. Her name's Patty. She became my girlfriend, and 38 years later, we're married and a couple kids. So yeah.
You're gonna pull that awesome nautical story back to.
Sorry.
Hold on, let me stop and back this up.
I do. I'm sorry, but
she's gonna listen to this.
Well, no, it's not that, but because you know what? Out of all the things that have happened to me, that's the best thing. She is the best thing that's ever happened to me. That and then having the kids,
Monica
and Clint, yeah, they're the best things that ever happened to me.
Monica's working up there now.
She is, yeah. She's the office manager in Acatan. Okay, so and the reason I bring that up is because now, I'm off this boat, but I've made no money, and so I need, I'm gonna just stay and try and find a job. I've become officially a beach rat, right? I'm a beach rat now. I'm broke. I'm a fisherman, and I got no job. I'm a beach rat, and the cannery was shutting down. They were going to fly her out, and I talked her into staying, and I says, hey, we could live at my brother's house, and, he's flying out, and so I went to show her that, and which was just a shell of a house. It's old World War II housing at the time, but it was so bad I took her to another brother's house, which is even worse. It was a Quonset hut, one of these half-round ones.
Well, shells of storage and ammunition.
Yeah, exactly, which he had fixed that up to a house, and it was, oh man, it was slum, right? And but it was his, he rented it from the corporation, so it took him to this other one, which is a 2-story house, but had all the windows, all the glass had been broken out, years ago through storms or vandalism or whatever. My brother had kind of rehabbed it a little bit by just putting visqueen plastic over the windows. Got a mattress, got this, but there's no running water, there's no electricity, there's a wood stove. There is a sink, but you got to pack water, and but there's just a wood stove, and that's what you got. So she goes, sure, I'll stay there. And she went into town, and she got a job cooking, being the cook at Stormy's Restaurant, which is a local pizza place and other, type of things in Unalaska. So now she's working, and I'm still on the beach. I got no money, but we're living off of her, which kind of continued through quite a number of years, because I was on all these boats and I'd make some money, but I never made it big for years. I was living. So anyway,
you're urban camping, essentially.
Yeah.
Really.
Oh, jeez. Yeah. But it's in the middle of winter. The storms would blow, and it would blow snow in through. You'd wake up, and it's freezing cold, and there'd be snow around you, and so anyway, so I get on a boat called the Equinox, this 140-foot old early 1960s kind of mud boat, which offshore supply vessel. And so we're going to fish Dutch Harbor red crab season. And I was on there for a month, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, never made a dime. Never made, well, I don't know, I might have gotten a $200 draw at one point, but essentially nothing, right? So I'm still, Patty's paying all the bills, what little bills we had, which is just, food. We need to buy food, and that's kind of it. And then I got on another boat, the Yankee Clipper, which was just a horrible, horrible experience. I was on there for 2 months, never received a paycheck, got ticketed for small crab, which ended up costing me $2,000 to pay off the small crab fine.
Why'd you get ticketed?
All of the crew members got the same ticket, and the captain. captain and every crew member was issued a citation by Alaska Department of Fish and Game officer, and you had to go to court, and the judge did his sentence, which was $2,000. But the worst thing was, and this was so the boat rolling on its side. I was too green to be scared at that point. But later on, I kind of got, wow, that was,
was scary,
but yeah, that was scary, But then here's the first really scary thing. We're out there. I'd been on there for, I don't know, a month or so at this point. And
Yankee Clipper?
At Yankee Clipper. And we'd hired a greenhorn off the Whitney Fidalgo. Unfortunately, I can't remember this guy's name. He was a nice guy. Real eager, and I was no longer a greenhorn, but I wasn't that experienced, but I was no longer a greenhorn, right? At least not in my mind, right? I knew the whole schematics, and I knew how to work a deck at least. So we're going out on the first trip that this guy was on board. We ran into a storm, and the captain said we had a load of gear on, and the captain said we got to get rid of all the gear, because it's unsafe with all this gear on board. So we got to get on. And so there was a very quick, maybe half a sentence of who's going to go on top, up on the stack. And he said, the greenhorn is, because it's the safest place for him, right? Anyway, the last pot that was getting pulled off the stack, he didn't quite know where to stand, and it came over. They lifted him off. It wasn't a crane system. It was a main boom with a trolley system, which means that the boom is fixed, and then you have this where the cable comes up and goes through, travels up and down on a trolley, up and down the main boom. Anyway, the deck boss lifted the pot up, swung to port. It knocked the guy in the water. I ran back there, yelling, man overboard. I saw it, right away. Grabbed a hold of the guy wire going up to the main boom, just kind of hanging on. The guy was back there off the stern. And the skipper swung around. And we never found him. And it was really tough. It's still tough on me.
I can hear it.
Yeah. Is really tough on me, and so kind of don't like to think about it too much, but we never found him. So we searched for about 20 hours, and then went to town, and his brother was in town and came down, and then his brother's trying to tell us, you guys got to go back out and search, and then the captain's who was a jerk. He was a flat out jerk, right? And he's telling him, if your brother's still alive, he can walk to town. Dude, that's not what you say. But anyway, so I fished about another, I don't know, maybe a month, maybe 3 weeks, I don't know. At some point, we came in and we offloaded, and I packed my bags. They went off, it was a horrible experience on there anyway, besides that. And then they went off and said, hey, we're going to dinner. The typical, now you're the young guy, you're the greenhorn, the grunt, do everything. So we're going to dinner, and you have to go down, you got to clean the crab tanks, when they get done offloading, you got to do this, do this, we'll be back. We're off. And they walked off the boat, and I looked around and says, screw this. I went in, grabbed my seat.
You hadn't got a check at all.
I hadn't gotten a check 2 months.
Been through a very terrible experience.
And packed my bags, and I took off. And so now I'm on the beach again, which is, I'm no worse for wear at this point because I hadn't made any money. Actually, then I got a job on the Northwestern. And
who was running the boat?
Jan Manis. If you know Leif Manis, it's one of his older brothers. There was Borge, and then Jan, and then Leif Magny, and it was Jan, the middle one. He was running the boat, and they were on crab, and they needed a guy, and I got the job.
And you had all this experience.
I had all this experience, and you know what? it was the first time that I actually made money. And I went out there, I think I fished for, maybe another 5 weeks or something. I made $5,000. So,
Patty was happy.
oh my goodness, yeah, and it just seemed like that was all the, that was an enormous amount of money, right? And but that was it. We were done. We were done fishing. I was done fishing. I'd had enough. I'd experienced, what I later came to find out is probably a near-death a boating experience on that first boat, with the boat rolling over, how many boats roll on their side and come back, and then with the guy falling overboard. I was done. It was summer '80, and we came down here to Seattle. I was going to make my way on the beach. I looked for a job, but it was right in the middle of Reaganomics, high unemployment, high interest rates, the whole bit. And you probably didn't live through Reaganomics.
Oh, I remember Reagan.
Yeah, and so anyway, so after trying all summer to get another job, and on the beach, it never happened. So went down. Time to go on the docks, start looking, and
Oh, you were back here in Seattle then?
I was down here in Seattle. Yeah.
And Patty was still looking?
No, she came down here with me. She rode we both rode the Northwestern down. And yep, packed up everything we had, put it on the Northwestern, rode it down here, got in, got it tied up, and everyone went their separate ways, and we did too. We went and got an apartment, and 8th and Marion, and got a car, and oh yeah, we had a few bucks. Of course, those bucks quickly went away, but
Sure.
Yeah.
What was the car?
A '69 Chrysler New Yorker, 4-door. Big engine. I called it the tuna boat. And so that was, but we go into 3 job interviews a day, and no one's hiring. And so we just, finally I had to stop looking for jobs because I couldn't afford to keep paying the gas, and not get a job. So anyway, came down, started beating the docks, and no job. But I thought, well, the first place I'm going to go is the Northwestern. The last boat I made money on, right? And
So far from the story I'm hearing, it's the only boat you made money on.
Well, it is, yeah, absolutely. And so I'd heard about the owner, Sverre Hansen. He was kind of a legend at that time. Many things with the Northwestern. Only guy to buy a boat out of Marco Shipyard with no partners. Only guy to buy a boat out of Marco Shipyard with no loan. Pay cash, $1 million for it, cash. You had to get a loan from the cannery for the gear. $150,000 loan for that. Is the story. But it was built in '77, so it was a relatively new boat, beautiful boat,
Still is a beautiful boat.
Still is, yeah. It's a little longer now.
A little different, yeah.
It was a 108 Marco at that time with the low house and everything. So anyway, I went down there and started kind of hanging out, waiting for this infamous Sverre Hansen to show up. And so it took a few days, 3, 4, 5 days, maybe on to the second week. I can't remember. It was a while. Finally, this guy shows up in this rickety red Ford Courier pickup, rusted to shit, rattly, slammed the door 3 times to get to stay closed, and he gets out and he grabs some floor matting out of the back of the truck and throws it on deck, and no one else is on board, and so I go up and I go, hey, I so and so, and I'm looking for Sverre Hansen. He goes, yeah, I'm Sverre, and I thought to myself, God, this guy doesn't have 2 nickels to rub together,
Well, he paid cash for that boat.
Yeah, he paid cash for that boat. Well, it's the reason rich people get richer is they don't spend any money, So anyway, but he talked with me and he says, I don't got a job for you, but I can give you a ride. I'll let you ride the boat north as long as you help load us. We got a load of gear to load on. You load the gear. We'll do this. We're going to put on whatever. It was a load of gear, 4 high or whatever. And, And so he let me do that, and I got a free ride north. And Patty, meanwhile, had gotten a job at the Unicy Inn being a dishwasher. So they flew her on in Dutch Harbor. Yeah, so we're gonna go back
up. You guys are working this out.
Oh, we are. Yeah, we're tag teaming it here. She got up there, and I got up there, and I had no job to go to. She at least had a job to go to and housing, and but a couple days out of Dutch Harbor, the skipper came down and says, "I got a job for you," and I go, "Really? With what boat?" And he goes, "Well, the Silver Wave." Silver Wave? Oh, it was a Highliner for East Point Seafoods at that time, right? And so I heard of this boat, real Highliner. And so he goes, "Well, it's just a daily position, it's all they got, $100 a day, but you can have it." And I go, "I'll take it." Tell him I'll take it. He goes, "Well, the captain's name is Rangveld," and he goes, "You can have it." So we got in, I went over there, and I got my job, $100 a day, but only for fishing days. Don't get paid in town. Got to do all the work, but $100 a day when we're out fishing. And so I go, okay. So we went out, did that, and what a first-class operation. The Northwestern was a first-class operation. It was very steady, though. It wasn't that fast-paced. It was, you're hauling 140 pots a day, and then you shut down. 140 pots a day, and you shut down. You're sleeping every night. That's what you're doing. This boat, it was 24 hours a day with one person in the bunk, and the boat just worked until it was full, which was about 2 days, typically to fill the boat up. And it was, so you got 4 hours off deck a day. That's what you got. And you better not waste them. As they told me on that boat, better sleep fast. You have to do everything fast. You got to count fast. You got to fill bait jugs fast. You got to throw the hook fast. You got to do everything. You got to cook fast. You got to sleep fast. So, and I learned that. Yeah, you better sleep fast with 4 hours in the bunk. And so anyway, but did a couple trips there. They still didn't have a full, a shared position for me, and they all agreed that I was, needing a shared position. So I told them, well, I'd heard of some jobs that opened up in town, and went and got on the beach and said, I got to go my own way, And the guys tell me, "Oh, I think you got to stay." And no, I got to go my own way. I got to find a shared position. And spent ended up to be one of their trips on the beach, looked for a job, didn't find a job, and then they came in. The half share guy had broken his wrist, got it smashed in between two pots, and so a job came open. Unfortunately, I wasn't there to apply for it. That I'd made my rounds. I was making 2 rounds a day, and when they came in, I went behind the mountain to go over to this other dock. They'd snuck in. I didn't see them, and so then I saw them later on in the bar, and they're going, they're all Norwegian, right? And they couldn't say Howard. Couldn't say that. It was Huvard. And they go, "Huvard, where the hell you been, man?" And I go, "Well, have you got a job?" "No, I don't got a job." "Well, Ronnie broke his arm and da-da-da. We need you on the boat." "Well, we already hired a guy." "Oh, come on, No, we hired a guy, and he's going to be going here. But he hasn't showed up yet. We hired him, he hasn't showed up yet. So get your ass to the boat." So I got my ass to the boat. Spent all night. I was taking tally on the boat, taking tally with the crab, with the weights.
Yep.
Yeah, I was doing that, which you always got paid $1. It's $1 1,000. Think that's what it was, $1 1,000.
Doing tally?
Pounds for tally. So 200,000 pounds, $200, right? Yeah, it's $1 1,000 pounds. And so you take tally. So
Patty's happy.
Yeah. So I'm doing that, and I'm washing dishes, and I'm buffing the boat out. I'm doing all this stuff, and the guy still hasn't showed up. Now it's morning, and it's 10 o'clock. It's 11 o'clock. The boat's done offloading. They're doing the fish ticket, and he's getting the guy's draws, and he's doing all that stuff. And he says at noon we're leaving. We're going to the fuel dock at noon, and if he hasn't showed up by noon, you got the job. And so noon came and went, and we took off.
Which boat was this?
The Silver Wave, and the same one, right?
Yeah.
So I got the job, but the guy that had replaced me for $100 a day, he was still there, and they go, well, you know what? What we're going to do is we're going to split the half share, and we're going to split the $100 a day. So I ended up being a quarter share and $50 a day, but quarter share on that boat. I mean, that boat, they put in 1.1 million pounds that season of red king crab. 86 cents a pound. It was lucrative, right? And so I made money on that. And but after that, the whole thing, Patty always had a steady job. I'd make these little chunks of money, and they were really, I think back on it, they were little chunks of money, because I get these little chunks. My money would kind of pay for our vacations outside. Her money would pay for everything else. And
maybe replace the visqueen with some windows.
She had, as soon as I got a job and started making money, she ended up quitting Unicy because it was just a horrible outfit to work for, and she got a job working at the Elbow Room. And so she is working, she's a barmaid in the Elbow Room, the infamous Elbow Room, right?
Been there.
And, oh, you have?
Oh, yeah, I woke up outside one time without remembering anything.
Wow. And, so she was doing that. She ended up working there for, I think, 6 years, because we lived in town.
You lived there 8 years.
We lived there 8 years, yep. And she worked there, I think it was six or seven. And she ended up was being a bartender at night. She went from barmaid to the bartender at night. And then she became the daytime bartender. And then the owners were, half the ownership was the Larry and Peggy Scheisnikoff, had the Peggy Rose, and they would go off salmon fishing in the summertime. So then Patty started being the manager in the summertime for them. And so she always had a job. And I was making these kind of little chunks of money. And so anyway, so I ended up kind of working. I was always working on these boats, and I really got in with the Norwegian crab boats a lot, but unfortunately, they were always hiring their cousins or their brother-in-laws and this and that and the other, and those would be the starting crew, and those guys would get the gravy. And then they'd call good old Howard, because Howard would be sitting on the beach in the beginning of the season.
Hoovard.
Yeah, Hoovard, yeah. They'd call Hoovard, and they'd get me down there about halfway done with the season, and I'd get on board, I'd finish off the season, I'd make the end of the season. I finally ended up getting off those and tried to get on American boats. And now I found out, well, of course, they're all American, right? But yet there was a difference between the Norhutski boats and the American boats.
Those Norwegian boats were run fine-tuned, right?
Oh, they were fine-tuned. But you know what? Nothing was ever brushed. You worked and you just did steady. It was steady Eddie. Just all day long, you were just hauling gear, and everything was just laid out perfect. And those American boats they got into this whole thing where they were trying to, it kind of became a competition. How much gear can we haul an hour? So they were stacking it all instead of picking and dumping when they're on crab. Even when they're on the crab, they wouldn't pick and dump. They would stack.
Why would you do that?
Because they could say, they could go to town, they could brag about, we haul 28 pots an hour. But yet then they turn around and they set it back. But they had it all figured out. They figured they hauled more gear than the other way, But they're working a hell of a lot harder too. Well, all through this, the king crab demise had happened. The crab had taken a dump, right? You'd heard that.
What year is this now?
I went through the 80, 81. It was king crab 80 on the Silver Wave, and I was picking up these other jobs, doing Dutch Harbor crab on the Chena and different boats. I worked on a lot of different boats, kind of going around picking up.
Well, I'm not trying to speed you up that much. I'm going back to with you and Patty, 8 years now out of Dutch Harbor. You're at this point, what?
Okay,
27, 28?
Yeah, so I was working on a boat. I settled in on a boat called the Golden Pride,
which
sunk.
Okay.
Okay, so I was on there for 2.5 years, It was owned by, well, we don't need to go into that. So it was 86-foot boat, and same owner as the Golden Pisces, except he's passed away now, Buster McNabb. So we were joint venturing. I got into trawling now. I've done away with crab, and I'm going to be making my way as a trawler. So I'm on there, and I knew that boat was unstable, and I had progressed, throughout. I mean, like, I really fast forwarded right there, through that.
You know what? Just because of that, I'm going to do something I've never done before. We're going to stop it right here, and we're going to continue with episode 2.
Are you kidding?
No, we are 42 minutes into this son of a
Are
bitch.
you kidding? I am just starting.
I know. We're just going to get it going. So we're going to break it off here. We'll have an episode 2, which we're going to record right now.
All right.
While you are good and liquored up. So we'll break it off here, guys. And the next one you will hear will be episode 2 with Howard Malcolm. This has been Galley Stories. I've been your host, Mark Kaler. And don't forget the ALS fundraiser on May 15th. Trident is sitting their food truck there to give 100% of all proceeds to that for the ALS event in Pat Dwyer's name. So if you do nothing else, come by and buy the food.
There you go.
Or send a check.
There you go.
Because we'll take those, right?
That's right.
ALS TDI. And we'll see you on the next episode. That's probably going to be posted with this episode. But we'll see you guys next time.